interaction today. I know some of you are already using Mentimeter before, so if you don't mind just pointing to that so I can ask questions for your opinion and stuff like that, so we can have a much more both-way dialogue rather than just one-way sharing something. So while waiting, everybody can try to scan. I have a question just to test, make sure this works. That way I can shape my talk to a little bit better to who you are. I'm trying to share something that's a little bit more open as far as I'm not going to repeat whatever Joseph has already shared. I think those are really great tips to get the e-commerce website running well. This morning I'm going to more into looking into Magento as a platform itself. Like, why do we choose Magento? I mean, what kind of commitment are you when you involve in the Magento? Cool. A lot of merchants and agency. Great. That works. So just a quick hi. I'm Muliadi from ICUBE. We are an agency back in Indonesia, Jakarta. I used to be in LA for 16 years before I moved back. Have a chance to grow the team. This is the original team, about 8 of us. Now about 160 back in Jakarta, focusing on the Magento, which like you guys already start asking the question. 160 in Magento, what are you guys doing? Why Magento? and we're also the host of Meet Magento in Indonesia, so if you want to find an excuse to go to Jakarta and then have vacation in Bali, feel free to come. This is the only good to do that. And you can swing back. Usually the Meet Magento Singapore is like right in the corner, so you can, from Indonesia, go to Singapore and go back and have the whole Asia trip that way. But yeah, I mean, it's a quite, what's that called? It's a quite journey with Magento. I've been using Magento since version 1, which is 14 years now. And everybody here will say, yeah, it's a really pain. I mean, the one that's been doing Magento for a long time, it's like, start asking questions to yourself, like, why do I have to put our stuff into this platform? But at the same time, I think if we think about it, not many platforms can stand that long. I mean, 15 years of age as a platform, put Magento along the league of like WordPress and Drupal, which is 15 and 20 years as well as a platform. So there must be something why the community is behind it, right? I mean, if a platform is not that good, I don't think the platform will last that long. And I think this is a lot of things. I mean, we've been talking about the community behind it. It's really great. I think a lot of us has been go through Magento, making our business out of it, both as a merchant or as a solution provider. But there's a lot of things that they are ahead of the curve when they first released. I mean, things like, I don't know if you remember, I mean, I'm old, even though this all, I just color my hair, but it's all white, supposed to be if you see my picture on there. But it's like initially they come up with the first platform that including the facet navigation as part of the free open sources in the e-commerce, I mean, before anybody else. They also, the first one that already have like all the functionality, like the tier pricing, stuff like that. It's already part of the core of the product. So it's, and that those are very expensive. And Deca, I think that's one of the platform. I don't know if I remember that. I think they got bought by Oracle, something like that. But those are like $1 million solutions to get Endeca. Foot Locker using Endeca, that's why I know. And then, but the filter navigation is already there. And that still stay as one of the, a function that is part and dear into the product management into Magento, which is kind of great. But yeah, I mean, and another thing is about obviously the flexibility, right? I mean, with Magento, you see all the code, both open source and now Adobe Commerce, which we're going to talk a little bit more. But the flexibility is one of the more attractiveness on that, right? We start building stuff on the top of it before it become a features on the e-commerce. I remember we building the whole B2B features for our clients before the B2B actually come out. Obviously, there's the pain on the side of it, which is later on we have to refactor all the code to comply the B2B code from Magento once they come out, but that's a different story altogether. But that's the flexibility that we see, right? When we invest something with Magento, we see the potential of able to ahead of curve, either building yourself or tap into the community that actually building those features ahead of time so that we can actually able to use that and not waiting for whatever the product version release of itself. But that flexibility, obviously, this is the part that I think when we invest on the platform, we also has to know all the bad stuff about it, right? We're not just sugarcoat about it. Depending on how we treat that flexibility, sorry. Is it up? There we go. That is the one that makes Magento attractive, but that's also the single source of making the Magento completely chaotic. Because as the more you put customizations, the more you keep changing, and the more you do it, and that's really the number one reason that we make a lot of mess in the Magento that we have, right? So the key thing is really to be able to understand Magento. What is the core strength of the Magento itself? Always ahead of curve, knowing both the roadmap and the key features that come with it, right? This slide, I was speaking to developers actually when I first created this slide. Believe it or not, a lot of the developers that go into Magento, they start straight into how to build extension and how to customize stuff without actually reading the user guide of the Magento, whether that function is there or not. And that same go with the merchant also. Sometimes, a lot of time we get trapped into, oh, I want it this way, without knowing exactly how it's actually get done already, or whether that feature is already there. And we can tweak ourselves a little bit to actually meet the features instead of just directly create the changes. So that's the question that we always ask the customers whenever they ask for customizations. Do you really need that customizations? Can we work around it? Because there's the consequences always. Again, with the flexibility, it's always there's the consequences of whatever that we do. And we have to accept some of the quirkiness of Magento. That's not going to change. People always complain about how the indexing works in Magento, why we have to rely on the caching, the slow, and everything like that. But that's part of the way that the platform is being designed. So Magento has never be a Shopify. It's not a Shopify. I think I saw following a lot of the discussion around it, just doesn't make sense to me because it's a very different platform. It serves very different purposes. Just to give example, I have a client that really have to have a website that have a multi-location of their retail stores. And each of the retail stores, when they select the stores, the product catalog and the price has to change just based on the price of that actual physical stores. Something like that, you're never able to do it or pull it off with Shopify. That's just no way. So understanding exactly, oh yes, with the Magento ability to do customizations on the pricing, that is exactly why we need and why we use Magento in the first place. And obviously, the power of the community. I mean, I can't emphasize enough on that one because the whole community building a lot of so much different features that we actually take advantage of it. Obviously, here we have a Headworks, Amasti, and a lot of these folks that's been really doing a great job getting this done. So, this is Joseph already said, so I'm not going to repeat. Extensions, yes, but be careful. Extensions is always a dual-sided sword. So, I mean, you have to know that not every extension developers were thinking across the board, oh, I'm building extensions. I don't expect my extension will work with other people's extensions, right? I mean, everybody have their own way of thinking just because of the flexibility of Magento. So don't ever thinking that, oh, I can have a 20 extension and all work along well. So that has to be really, really careful. So let's go into much more a progressive topic. Those are more basic ones. I want to see how much of you have already kind of go into the next step of the front end experience of Magento. Can you, if you don't mind, just let me know. I mean, it's okay. I mean, don't worry if you just answer Luma is the only way that you do. There's no right and wrong in here. If you guys can fold. You don't have to fold all 6 of them. Hopefully, I have some results soon. Whoa, nice. Luma friendly, something like that. Great. Let's wait a couple seconds here. Let's keep changing. Hoover. Awesome. All right. I think this is it. We're closing it. So I think this is great. I mean, we'll talk about this later, but I think Hoover will be really happy that they're becoming one of the first choice here of the headless. Let's see if you agree with this and see. This is more like ranking 1 to 10, whether you agree or not on this statement. Right, still moving around. Oh, expects the yellow one will be all the way number 4. Let's see a little bit more. Okay, so I guess if I read this and assuming, I mean, obviously this is a very small sample, but I think we all agree the current state of Magento is really painful. My business is not fine, just stay on the curve. But the alternative is still quite expensive. Like, I mean, if you want to do headless and stuff like that, it does adding a significant layer of a cost and effort to do that. But unfortunately, we are in the convergence of things that technology keep moving, changing fast. Unfortunately, I'm acting as a CTO in the company, so I constantly have to make decision about whether we adopt this early, adopt this late, on something like that. But from the session that you earlier already listened to Jack's Phil, you know that we are at the stage that going every template is just the same. Obviously, the one that can keep a lot of the area doesn't really need to change as well, right? I think that the process of payment quite constant right at this point. Order processing is much the same. I mean, across the board, it's the user interaction and user experience will change. There's like in my country right now, everybody loves short video. I mean, I think it's just because of the demographic perspective. They just very, very much involved in TikTok and stuff like that, and they shop there. They expect to get that kind of like a live interactions with the websites to perform the commerce. So the user experience changes. I mean, and this is why I think I see a lot more and more, I mean, e-commerce platform adopting into the headless. Headless doesn't mean PWA. A lot of people thinking, oh, headless has to be progressive web apps. But essentially what headless means is separating the front-end experience with the back-end experience, right? Hoover is a very good example, allowing you to do that. I mean, you invest in HTML, CSS, JavaScripts, not necessarily a React or something like a web applications, but it's making the flexibility of creating front end much faster than the old Luma, which is kind of, I think, and is aging right now to the point. But then another term has been thrown up a lot in a lot of the conference, like composable. I think some people say, oh, composable is an extension. We've already been doing composable because we've been doing extension in Magento for a long time. I don't really agree with that. I think the technology right now with the whole headless and the front-end technology that we have at this point, making this possible. In the past, it's very expensive if you want to try to combine multiple technology into one. But now I think we are in the convergence of area where you have choices to actually combine multiple platforms into something that much more makes sense for your business. And I'll show you a real sample of this very quickly. Microservices always been there, but I think now it's all just talking about services. We dropped the whole term of micro, and it's just separating the services compared to like a single applications like Shopify, which we call Monolithics. But can they really, has to be a or can we combine those? I mean, those are the questions I think we have to start kind of asking questions to ourselves, because we know re-platforming is very expensive. I mean, it's not fun. I really like amazed some merchant will do like re-platform every year from one platform to another platforms, just because, oh, I'm not happy with this, I'm moving the other platform, and another year I'm moving the other platform again. But every re-platform costs a lot, not only just from the costing technology, but costing the user experience. You have to rebuild again customer's experience. You have to do the data transformations. The ranking on the site has to be rebuilt. A lot of behind the scene costs that really doesn't make sense. And you already built up a lot of the process, let's say the order processing, you do omni-channel stuff. Now you have to redo it again on a different platform. It's just very, very, very cumbersome to do that. With the headless, I think there's more open up questions. Even, I know this is Magento, but I think every other platform start opening up, hey, you can just use my catalog services. You can just use my checkout if you like, or you can just use my CMS if I like WordPress. So that's become an interesting question for us, both the merchant and the solution providers and the e-commerce practitioners. Like, what does that mean going to be? I mean, how's the extension will be? What's Magento role will be in this case? So one of the real sample that we do in our company, we take out the checkout away from the Magento, because we feel like in our country, there's so many different payments. We literally have every banking have their own payment in their solutions, so we have to be able to do that. Obviously, previously, we always just do it as an extension inside Magento. There's always new startup coming up every month that will do the logistics. So there's plenty of logistic partner that you have to work with. Things keep very changing. So we want to find a way to be able to unify shopping that is kind of seamless for everybody, regardless whatever the shopping platform that they have. So we decided to take away and start working on our own checkout. So it's kind of like this kind of diagram. Start scratching out what services we need and stuff like that. So the result is, let me try to see if I can code this correctly. So this is just a basic Luma. I have put some that. So as soon as the hit checkout, I think this a lot of the checkout technology been doing that. But in Indonesia, we use WhatsApp a lot. So we just changed the login to only using phone number. Today, this is a demo site, so 0216. So it's a mobile friendly, because in Indonesia, everybody just use mobile phone for almost 90% of the time. So we make sure the checkout works in the mobile first. Home delivery, pick up, install, very basic stuff. But this is the crazy part. Like I said, there's so many shipping. So you have to be able to group all the different shipping based on your address. This can be more. I mean, this list is already filtered down the smallest one possible. But then same with the payment. I have to basically have that many payment methods, if you can see. You won't be able to do this in a single page checkout on most of the extension or plugin that we have. So with the headless possibility, I think this is another, this is one of the interpretation. Headless doesn't have to be the entire things. I can just take out just the part that's really important for the customer experience and start making it much more user-friendly in that case to adapt to our audience. And that way, it's much more easier to maintain. So it's just a very sneak, I know this, I'm not supposed to do this. Shopify, just hit checkout very quickly. It's just going to do the same thing. So I can have now all of a sudden have the same checkout for multiple platforms. So that's how the headless and composable will look like. At least that's my interpretation, is the way you compose multiple technology, multiple platform way, and creating your own, mix and match that to become much more make sense for you. So you might be able to stay with one platform much longer because you like the order management system without has to change the entire things. I think that's, to me, that's kind of the possibility of the future will look like as we go more. And this is a continuous process. Unfortunately, in the technology world, we have a joke with one. It's like every 20 years, it looks like it's just a loop. I'm old enough to see one loop already. So it's a constant change. So we have to keep adapting. The whole headless and composable is probably 2 or 3 years old. I mean, we don't know what will be. Maybe they're not going to go to the website anymore. They just go see everything on video and start checkout from the video in the future. Who knows? Looking at our audience, that possibly. Even Magento and Adobe keep changing every quarter. They have a quarterly release. So there's no longer possibility to just I'm going to stay on the same version and not upgrading, because the security patch features and that keep changing. We have to continue able to adapt with all that complexity happen. So now where's the difference now, Magento and Adobe? This is where, at least, once again, this is my personal opinion, it's becoming a diverge two different platforms. No longer in the past we will say, oh, you upgrade from open source, upgrade to Adobe Commerce. But I think at the end now, it's very clear that it's a two different product. And Adobe Commerce is actually building, it's a very good example of building composable and composable commerce or headless on the top of Magento core, right? They start building a lot of services nowadays. The search, the product recommendations, those are no longer inside Magento. They're building that as a separate services. And if I predict, which I don't think Adobe will say yes or no, but I think the direction is going to be more like enterprise SaaS from the Adobe Commerce perspective. And everything's going to be more like a service-oriented, the way that you're going to integrate with Adobe. But that will give you access to Adobe experience and the entire family. So it has to be really clear, the value of the platform, so you know exactly how you position the Magento, how you position Adobe Commerce. I don't agree that one is only for small merchant, one is for enterprise. I think it's a very different platform, very different tool. You just have to choose correctly and put it into the strategy correctly with the strength of that own platform itself. So that's, and obviously there's a lot of partners here that can help you with it. It's not easy. It's things getting complicated. I think Ravi is very much said in the front. It's easy to make things difficult, and it seems like that way, but it's also, we should be able to simplify that as well. So that's it of my sharing. Hopefully that opened up a different kind of thinking over the platform. This is my contact, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muliadi. Are there any questions for Muliadi? Please raise your hand and I'll come over.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a short question regarding, you showed example with kind of external checkout, and would it work, for example, if customer would log in on Magento and would checkout could recognize this customer?
Yes, definitely that's possible. I mean, with all the API and GraphQL that's provided in the Magento, you can actually pass a session toward it so that you can just generate a session. The reason we do that with the way that we do it, because two things. First, we log in by WhatsApp or phone number in my country is kind of the de facto standard. So we make it easy just to do it that way outside, so that we actually loop back the customer record back to Magento instead of logging in Magento.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Feel free to find Muliadi later. I'm sure he will gladly answer your questions. Thank you, Muliadi.
Thank you.